It's a good question. All right.
Wait,
So
wait.
we are, let me make sure we're on the right.
Oh no.
Okay. What did I say about modifying your presentation right before presenting?
Let's see. Okay, you'll go.
This is a long line. Many adults at many trade shows have made the same mistake.
Adults is making it?
At trade shows. I mean, when companies are showing off what they've made, they things always go wrong the day you're showing it. Every time. That's why I got to go to trade shows with National Instruments, was to fix whatever was broken. We don't know what's going to break, but we know something will. All right, so Caleb, this is built out of Legos.
Wow.
And so tell us a little bit about this design, because it's part yours and part something from the instructions.
Mm-hmm.
So what part was from the instructions?
The snail.
So it's a snail. And then he added on, what did you add on?
Like a little thingamajig on top.
A thingamajig on top,
A motor.
a motor,
Some wheels.
and the wheels. And do you remember?
A thingamajig on the bottom.
So when he came up, Caleb. Okay, so fidgeting with the display. Why don't we, when we're moments from demoing.
This is all.
Okay. I can't do this while holding a webcam. So tell them how you came up with this rubber band thing. How did you, what is it doing?
It's connecting the motor wheel to the wheel so the wheel moves on its own.
So this rubber band carries the energy from the motor down to the wheels to turn it.
Wow.
And this was his own design. I did not tell him to do that. I said, how are you going to get the power from the motor to the wheels? And he said, I know how to do that.
Yeah, I've seen it in instructions before.
All right. So now here,
Can I hit play?
here is the program that he made.
Tell them how to make it now.
So this is visual programming.
Can I tell them how to make it?
Yes.
You get a play, you get color 6, you get math thing on 1.
You
You
set the
get a
initial number.
You get a repeat block, a vert block, a repeating block, then the yellow timer, then a microphone.
And what does the yellow
on
timer
bottom.
do?
It waits for
Whatever
something.
you've got attached to it. And what's
Yeah.
attached to it?
Yeah, and then
What is that attached to it?
a microphone.
A microphone. So
It waits.
let's
for-
ask the audience, what does it do if you're waiting and it has a microphone logo? What do you think it does? It waits for? Some kind of sound, and it has a little sound meter. Yeah. Okay.
So, and then you need a wheel, thing turning this way. They need motor 9,
It's speed.
speed 9, 1 second, plus 1,000.
Oh, it's not going to do the mudkip thing. Let's re-record mudkip.
Oh yeah, we gotta re-record it.
We got to delete it and then re-record it.
Re-record. I get
Nope, it's not working. All right, let's make a new one. Ready, go.
my kid, my kid.
So this is a kind of a partnership between the tablet and the robot. All right,
And
so
then
now
you
hit
make-
play.
And wait, I want to tell them the rest. Then you do plus 1,000, then down, then this, then this.
And then this, then this. Okay.
No!
Oh my word.
So then it does math along the way too. So do it one more time. Okay, so No, let's stop it now. Let's stop it. So that's his own design. I asked him, no, Caleb. Okay. So I asked him what he wanted to show you, and that's what he built for you. So,
Wow.
all right. For our next thing, we might need some assistance. Maybe from, hey, we're going to go over to Battlebots. Maybe Mariella can be our assistant here. So I'll show for the web. These little robots, and
Blacksmith.
you can control them. And their armor is designed to come off. So if, hold on, let me. Bye. If the armor flies off, it's not broken. It's designed for that. So don't press anything. Don't push anything. All right, that one paired. Yeah, go ahead. Hold it down. Ah, he hit me. All right, let's do it like this. Hold on, Caleb. Caleb.
I
Hold
want
on.
the whole
Come over here. Come over here. So the web can see. All right, so you can be over on this side. So you go forwards, backwards, left, right. And this button. Ah!
He's a saw.
So you can control it. All right, so hold on, Caleb. Hold on. So the goal is to either knock off the armor or knock your opponent off the board. And here's a hint: the best way is to just dodge him and he'll drive right off. Like that.
Hey.
All right, on your mark, get set, go.
You can fly the basketball.
Oh, oh, she's about to lose. Hey! Oh, almost lost one.
Oh my God.
All right, we can do one more round. Okay. On your mark, get set, go. Oh, all right, that was so fast. I'm gonna do one more. One more. Just one more time. All right, on your mark, get set, go. Oh, 2 down. All right, so those are the robots that we can display. I had one other, but it's broken today. So.
These kids are our future.
Yes.
Hey.
All right, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. All right, some other time we can do more battles. So we'll let the kids go back to Sunday school.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, who's going to take on Rick? All right. The other thing, you can pass these around, are these are laser cut, laser engraved aluminum parts.
Oh my word.
This one has kind of an embossed feel on it. I just carved out the edges. Hey, Caleb, stop that. Caleb, seriously, thank you. I know, it's a lot of fun. So you can feel the texture on it. But then this one is just kind of a more flat.
Wow.
So, all right, Caleb, can you go with them to Sunday school? All right, y'all know where you're going?
Yeah.
All right, go for it. If we see your feet going this way, then yeah.
Oh, bless their hearts.
Yes. All right. He'll charge you Legos for it. If you got any spare Legos, then he'll take them. All right. Thank you for humoring us on that. Caleb was quite anxious that we didn't get to do that last time. So that was 90% of why he wanted to join me for this. All right, there, I'm in frame. So now for like real Bible study, right? Let's share. Can you read that? Do you want me to zoom in?
That's better.
There we go. All right, and I've got all my, I'm not texting, I have all my notes on my phone. It's also where I have all my Bible study tools. I'll show it kind of to the camera. It's an app called Olive Tree. And the interesting thing is, let me pull it up. So I can scroll to a Bible verse, and then down here, it pulls in everything that I've got in my digital library, which is extensive. And like, if it says something about Eliashib, it's going to pull in any references from a commentary, from other Bible verses, everything about Eliashib. And if it has, you know, and they went to Bethsaida, it'll pull in everything about Bethsaida and commentaries about that verse. I can just tap on, I'm going to show you my cheat sheet. When I'm in a hurry, I can just tap on a word, and I have a special version that connects it to the translation. So I can go from English to the original languages instead of having to read it all directly. In Greek, I can do that. In Hebrew, that's too rusty. So in Greek, I can just read the Greek New Testament, but Old Testament stuff, I need the cheat sheet. So that's how, if you ask me a question about translation and I don't know it off the top of my head, that's what I'm doing, as I'm pulling up what is it right there. And it does have stuff about the dung gates. So our basic idea is we use the Life Journal reading plan, and I have stuff we can talk through about any of the readings. Font size extra large. There we go. So I can go anywhere, but if anyone read it, do you have any questions? You want to know about the dung gate? So that's a good question. So the question for those on the line was, how did they figure out who's going to do which sections of the wall? And sometimes throughout the text, if you didn't glaze over reading this long list of names, every once in a while it gave you a little insight, like this was close to their home. Some of them are larger gates, and so you see like the rulers or some of the goldsmiths took on some of the more expensive parts. And then some did stuff that was close to them or close to where their businesses would have been. So a lot of it, some of it was just who was able to afford some things, but a lot of it was, I have a vested interest in this part of the wall. And then we all work together to connect our pieces. There are, yes. So, and Nehemiah gets to that in a little bit. So they, first off, I will also back up for those who can't just jump into the middle of an Old Testament book and know the historical background. Especially, I mean, Nehemiah is moderately famous among these later books, but even still. So Nehemiah so the history is, you've got King David, King Solomon, then a whole bunch, then the Israel and Judah split in two, so they became two countries, and that was for a long time. And that's where, when you read like the Old Testament prophets and books of history, you'll see references to Israel and Judah, and we might use those words interchangeably, but at the time they referred to two completely different countries, obviously related, but they split after Solomon. And eventually the north was conquered first, the south, Judah, was conquered later by the Babylonians. 70 years they were in exile, and at the end of that exile time, which the Babylonians were then conquered by the Persians, and the Persians were more interested in letting the Jewish people go, and many of the people that the Babylonians had brought in after conquering them. So this was their way of like building good rapport with various parts of their far-flung empire. And the Jewish people were one of them. And Nehemiah was one of a pretty high official for the Persian kings, and he was granted the ability to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the wall. And he was granted money and other supplies as well. So he was given everything he needed, and the ability, the power to also ask for stuff from other local people as well. So this is chapter 3 of Nehemiah, where we kind of skipped over all of that prologue and background. So Nehemiah is Jewish. His family was part of the exiles. He is getting to return with power and authority from the Persian king. And his mission is to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Questions on the context, or does that make sense? And we'll hear more from Nehemiah in the next 1 or 2 weeks. I don't remember. There's a sermon coming up on Nehemiah, so you'll get a little more on that. And as Scott was saying, cities were built so that there was the walled section, and there had to be walls to keep out invaders. And then there were a whole bunch of people who lived outside the walls. So most of the population of a city did not live inside the walls of the city. And then whenever there's war, they would come inside, which is also why it's hard, because like all your farmland is outside the walls. So if you're going to siege a city, all the farmers are now inside. So you got more mouths to feed and less people working the field. So that's why siege warfare was a big deal in olden times. And part of why preservation of food, like preserves, all those kinds of things were invented, partially to have stocks for winter and partially to have stocks in case you were besieged. So we actually see in Nehemiah 4, I think, that he brings all the people from the outer edges inside the city to protect them because they're starting to get threats. So there's just kind of a little throwaway line, but that's the context there, is he does want everyone to be protected. So he brings them in. That was a long way of answering your quick question. So the threat was locals. So Sanballat is the guy that we'll see in here. So he's kind of a local official or local warlord, and he doesn't like that the Jewish people are rebuilding the wall. He doesn't like it because that takes power away from him, and he tries to convince the Persians that this is a rebellion, even though Nehemiah was sent by the Persian king to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. But it becomes interesting for Nehemiah later, because Sanballat goes, hey, remember, these people rebelled. That's why the city was destroyed. That was against the Babylonians, but they're about to do the same thing to you. And so that's kind of how it's a local guy who was not part of, the broader Jewish continuity. And then he and his friends opposed them. Does that make sense? So one of the things that I find interesting in verse 8. We won't bother with the names. One of the goldsmiths, one of the perfume makers, because everyone knows, like, if you're gonna, let's say, like a retaining wall falls down, or Kathy, you've got some posts that have fallen down at your ranch, and you know someone who does perfumes. Is that the person you're calling? No. Anyone gonna hire the perfume maker for their home repair project? How about a wall that's protecting an entire city, right? Or even the goldsmiths. Okay, they might be able to pay for it, but do you like, stone and gold are very different skill sets. It's got some construction, so maybe I could see that. But the perfume maker, can we all agree? No overlap at all in the skill sets required here. And they restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall, which is a significant section that they repaired. You also, in this list, you have just a whole bunch of random Joes. You have, and the help of his daughters, right? These are not the people you would pick to rebuild your wall. It's not. But what's fascinating to me about that is that it's everyone pitching in, and together they're able to rebuild this wall to half height. We'll get to that in a second, really quickly. It's kind of like Wikipedia versus Encarta. Or anyone ever purchased an encyclopedia in the past? You still got it? Still got it? Not because you're referring to it, right? But because you don't know what to do with it anymore. So Encarta and Britannica, Encarta was an all online one from Microsoft, and then Britannica tried to create an online encyclopedia, and they hired the best experts in many fields. I think they had 80 people working on it for 5 years, and at the end of that time, they had a few dozen articles that all these experts had finally agreed on the wording. In the meantime, a couple years after they had started that, this weird project called Wikipedia was started, and they didn't pay anyone, and people volunteered to write the articles, and they had like 20,000 articles done in the same amount of time, in less time than Britannica had a few dozen. And when you actually compare the quality, well, every once in a while there are weird things on Wikipedia, but the overall accuracy of the articles is virtually identical to the ones that the experts spent all those years debating. And there's something about the church kind of embedded within that and embedded within this, which is it doesn't have to be the most skilled person you could ever possibly find. It can be the perfume maker who's willing to pitch in. And I think that's for all of us, that when all of us are pitching in, rallied around, Nehemiah had a very clear vision, and you could see its progress, the perfume maker's like, hi, I did more than the goldsmith today, so that was helpful, but everyone pitching in made something incredible happen. And I think that is kind of a metaphor for the church writ large as well. Yeah, with the carnival. The carnival was fabulous. And many of you were there. I saw many pitching in. So it was a bunch of people working together, and it was very successful and a lot of fun. And my kids had fun. It looked like yours did too. And we had a whole bunch of other kids. It was great. I also think it's what do you think? That's in 6. Nope, it's not in 6. I have the wrong. Oh, chapter 4, verse 6. Sorry. I'm going to skip a whole bunch of names unless you want me to go through each name. Yeah, that's what we want to know. All right, so we rebuilt the wall to half height for the people worked with all their heart. Why do you think they did it that way? Why do you think they built it to half height, but completely connected, rather than waiting until it was full height to get it all connected? Motivation. Tell me a little more. Yeah, so seeing the progress and being able to have like a huge milestone, and even though it wouldn't keep out invaders, you can go, yeah, but we rebuilt half. We did this. And yeah, so motivation, shrinking the change. Instead of going, we got to build this 20-foot wall, it's no, we're going to build a 10-foot wall first, with the idea that we can then expand it. I think you were going to say something, Denny? Yeah. Well, and like having a solid foundation. If like, it's kind of hard to join pieces of a foundation together after the fact. It's usually not recommended. So having a really good foundation that you can then expand on is also good. Yeah, Rick.
I think the low wall, but thing is more fun.
Right, yeah. We have this 47-foot tall wall with a 20-foot gap. That's there's some yeah, there's some funny fences like that elsewhere. That's another interesting point for those online. Right. Yeah. You don't want the 6-year-olds building the 20-foot section of the wall. They might be able to help with the 2-foot section of the, that part. So yeah, as you get higher, it gets harder. And that's where you do maybe need some actual people who know what they're doing. And also walls need to be, plumb, and the higher you go, if it's a Jenga tower, that's not going to help you either. So you got to have some skill. Yeah.
I think it shows community, if everybody is working together, beware. We want people to be developing something strong.
Yeah.
That's just the message.
Yeah. So Balot and the others who oppose them see, oh wow, they're committed. Like and as he said here, they worked with all of their heart. Like, you're not going to be able to undermine us, especially now. And they're also getting tired. Yes, they worked very hard. So shortage of resources, yes. So there's a few different components of that. One is they had to clear the rubble and of the previous walls, because the Babylonians did a stand-up job at knocking down the city of Jerusalem, which, in their defense, they had to do it 3 times. They sacked the city the first 2 times, and the Jewish leaders then stopped paying their taxes again both times. And the 3rd time they said, okay, we're going to do this for real, and we're going to knock over your temple while you're at it. So they would have to move heavy boulders and get them out of the way, and then use new forms and new rocks. Some could be reused, but a lot of it, it's a big job. And from Charlie's Playscape, I can tell you, the digging things out is the hardest part. So the moving of the rocks is the least fun part of this job. And they complain about that specifically. There's too much rubble. There's not enough of us. So clearing that out was probably their biggest problem. Nehemiah did have the ability to request resources from others, but he limited how much he did that because he wanted it to be them. He didn't want it to be the Tyrians up the road getting credit for this. So he made it harder for himself and for the people for the sake of, no, this is us and this is the Lord. Yeah. Good question. So what was for online, what was the intent of the Babylonians sacking Jerusalem? So they wanted tribute. So they came in and threatened. How it happened each time is they were threatened, we are going to destroy your city unless you pay us tribute. And then sometimes, there's stories in the Bible where they say no, and then God comes and rescues them. But in the book of Jeremiah, he was telling them, this time God's not going to save us. The Babylonians are part of God's plan. It's going to be really bad. But then after 70 years, it's going to be okay. Now that doesn't fly well. And yeah, that's the weeping prophet. He's called that for a reason. So God didn't save them. They had to pay tribute, but they didn't want to until they were sacked the first time. It was proven, okay, they're stronger than us. And Jerusalem is really hard to sack because it's up on a mountain. It is really hard to approach from three sides, and Hezekiah dug a well, so they had water, a source of water inside the walls of the city. And so it's really hard. That's why they don't just give up easily. So they get sacked the first time, they pay tribute. Then someone says, let's stop paying tribute. The Babylonians are far away, they're distracted. They stop paying taxes. The Babylonians go, nope, we noticed, and brought an army and sacked them again, took more leaders, and then same thing happened again, and that's the third time they came in and said, you're more trouble than you're worth. We're just going to blow you up. So, does that make sense? Yeah. And each time they took more leaders, more religious leaders, political leaders, and artisans with them. So a lot of the goldsmiths and a lot of the people who had talent were taken to Babylon so that they could, make the beautiful things in Babylon. Yeah, so that was one of the innovations of Rome, was they had a much more direct control structure across a much wider area. So that was their creation. Many of the empires of the past, or even like Alexander the Great, he just kept marching east, conquering everything he could. But in reality, they didn't set up a control structure. And after he died, it kind of devolved into 5 major kingdoms. They could all be actually controlled in a small enough area. The Romans figured out how to do it in concentric circles and actually do the control. So, so the Babylonians were more about just keep sending us money, and if we need, you're the human shield against these other armies that might come through. So if Egypt comes up from the south, we want them to want to go hit Jerusalem first to slow them down and kill those people instead of our people and give us time to recover. So money and human shields was essentially it. That's essentially, yeah. Humans are kind of the same in small and large scale. We're all still in middle school. It's just with bigger weapons. Instead of lunch money, it's tribute and gold from the temple. Also, I think it's interesting in 14. So this is where the people are getting nervous about Sanballat and the threats that he's speaking. So they think they're going to get attacked. And so Nehemiah says to them, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, so he got everyone together. Don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives, and your homes. So it's kind of interesting to me that he appeals to people on several different levels all at once. It's like you've got your national pride and your religious pride for remember the Lord and in this city. And then you've got, but also fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives, and the very personal as well. Now for them, this was not like an analogy. This was literally, if the walls fall, you die. So he was being rather literal. But I think for us, it's interesting to think about, if you think about the city as the church in our respect, and it's you might hear, well, we want the church to grow. Okay, but why? What is this church doing? What are we, the people of the church, doing that impacts you enough, that impacts your families, your sons, your daughters, your wives, your homes, that makes such a difference that, that we deserve to grow, or that you want to tell other people about it? What's the impact? How does it actually strike home, instead of just thinking about, these bricks stacked on top of each other that is First Pres Littleton? So it's kind of an interesting, different angle on the motivation.
Is this Nehemiah 4?
Yes, this is 4:14. I skipped over the rest of those names in chapter 3. I know Denny was really looking forward to hearing me try to pronounce all those names, but But of course, no one would know if I was saying them wrong. So you just say it with confidence and, and then we're good. 20. Last thing on Nehemiah. So he created this whole intricate plan. If we are going to be attacked, first off, we're going to keep building the wall. So he had them like strap swords onto their sides, and he created this rotation. He also was really smart in that he made sure that people were working on the section by their homes, so that this section right in front of you is protecting your house right behind you. It's kind of like if there's a flood coming and people are stacking, the sand. Like if they're looking behind them and their family is in the house right behind them, they're probably going to work a little bit harder, right? As opposed to being on some random stretch of the river. And so that's kind of what he does. Is like this, yeah. Each brick you stack is one more layer of protection for the family right behind you, in a very literal sense. So he makes this whole plan. He brings the people in, and he does all of these very smart tactical decisions. And they know that they don't have enough people to defend the whole wall, because Jerusalem has been massively depopulated at this point. And so he devises this system where they blow a trumpet. And if you hear the trumpet blast that's blown like this, they're attacking on that side. So everyone come and fight. So they have a way of rallying to different parts of the city. Now, after all of these verses, so I just summarized a whole bunch of verses for you. Then in verse 20, wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, join us there, and our God will fight for us. This is an interesting, it's not even a contrast, it's a combination to me. It's interesting that he plans like the Dickens and then knows the battle belongs to the Lord. So he's got all these plans and also a reliance and an understanding that if our God is for us, we're going to win. And if our God is not for us, we're going to lose. Just kind of interesting to, like for us, where can we be planning with the same tactical precision that Nehemiah has, but also where do we want to see God win the day? Those are kind of different questions related. Melissa and I were talking about this with the carnival, with the children's ministry event. And I was asking her, like, what would make you happy? Like, how do you know this event is good? And she said, well, if there's like 20 to 25 kids, and if I see them actually interacting with the Bible story things, then it's a success. Well, we blew past that. Like we slam dunked on that one. So that was fabulous. But we were talking about, if it's just like the interaction with those Bible story events is us planning and casting the seed, and then the Holy Spirit takes over from there. Or having the kids in the back of the sanctuary, like Caleb this morning was telling me about how I had referenced him in a sermon 2 weeks ago. Now, he was building Legos at the time, but he also, and I didn't say his name, I said my younger son, but he was paying attention enough to know. So that's kind of the same thing, is like we plan, and then what we're trying to do is get it close enough where God can take over, and God is the one who's actually doing it. Or in the New Testament, you see like Paul planted, Apollos watered, and God caused the growth. Same idea there that Nehemiah has, that we're going to plan, but we're going to plan enough to then let God do God's thing, which we can't always predict. So I can't say, that my goal for the event is that, 7 children have come to the Lord Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, because I don't know how the Holy Spirit's going to work in a given event. But I can say, well, I invited 25 kids to come to this where they might have that opportunity. So that's the planning, and then letting God do God's thing. So I don't think we'll have time for Luke, so we only got 4 minutes. But how about, this is an open question. Where would you love to see God win the day? Like, where would you love to see God on the move? It could be in your life. It could be in this church. Where would you love to see God on the move? Everywhere. Yes. I mean, it's hard to argue with that.
Getting this to work is the
From
key.
my personal perspective, but I also want this church to support, so I'm worried about getting more members so we can support the church and so bring other people.
Yeah. So the church kind of that dual nature of there's stuff, you know, in your life, but also for this church and wanting to see its impact and its enough impact on people that people do want to come and more people come here to thrive. Yeah. Thank you.
And I think working as a team, instead of my way, I team, we work as a we. And like I said yesterday, oh my, somebody told me that all of a sudden all these kids came and more kids came and they loved everything. They loved the carol, the singing, they loved all of it. And it was just great.
Yeah, so working as a team,
Right.
kind of like with in this text where
Right.
they just, you know, the
Exactly.
perfumers are pitching in, and then God can take the perfumers' inability to stack stones on top of each other and turn it into a useful wall if they're willing. So yeah, when we row together, when we're doing it not just our own thing, but in it together.
If we're all in the same boat and we're all differently, we're not doing it.
Yeah, I did that once. It was at the Hawaii Leadership Practicum. They had us get into boats and row as fast as you can without any coordination. And and then they said, now don't row as fast as you can. We're just going to coordinate you.
Right.
And you know, our second time after we're tired, not even working hard, but rowing at the same, you know, row. We smoked our first time, you know, not even close. So you worked less hard, coordinated, on the same page, went further, faster, and we weren't tired. So it's a great object lesson. So let's go rent some boats. Let's go. Chatfield, here we come. Any other thoughts where you'd love to see God on the move? In our country? Yeah. Wait a minute. Are you telling me there are divisions in our country? I hadn't noticed. So yeah, God helping us come together. Yeah, that's
You know, we did that.
we need that because I don't know the plan for that otherwise. Yeah,
We did that after 9/11.
yeah, for a period of
Everybody
time.
worked together.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that's a good idea, but nobody's doing it.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody went to their way.
Yes, I want everyone else to come do my way. Then we'll all be on the same page. That's great. But that never happens in the church.
Right. If this boat was sinking, we would all start being together. I know that about this church. So it's just like our country. And there's just one thing. Everybody knows what they want and because of the mistakes.
Yeah. And it's kind of like in Nehemiah where they had the city is destroyed, we need a wall. And that enabled, you know, the perfumers to work with the goldsmiths, to work with the daughters, to work with every Eliashib and Hezekiah and all those other random names. They were able to look past because no one had been able to rally them to do that for 70 years. And then Nehemiah is the right person at the right time with God on the move. And then they're able to work together. I will leave us on that. And actually a quick note, because we're 2 weeks away from the book club. Is that right? Yes, not next week, but the week after. So I will actually say I have finished it and I have my notes. What I do is I read it on Kindle and I highlight, and then I have a way of gathering all those highlights into a document.
Wow.
And it's divided by chapter even for you. So key quotes, key Bible verses from the book. So I will send that to you. I have it already, but I'm not going to send it to you until next week. So there's your. So even if you haven't read the book, you still want to join, we'll have the notes and you can refer to it. It is a little more pastor focused than I thought it was, but there's still a lot of stuff in there for everyone. It's just he's writing it from the perspective of a pastor who got burned out. So I will also bring discussion that kind of moves it out of the pastor realm for all of us. And again, it's about feeling burned out and how do you kind of rearrange the priorities in your life to not get burned out, or how to recover after you're burned out. and the interaction with family, work, ministry, kind of all that stuff is in there. So I will depastorify it for everyone, and you'll also get the notes. Yeah. Well, you'll get the Cody notes.
The coding notes. not the-
I used to do that in AP history. The professor would give us 10 minutes to study right before the test. And I would, it evolved into, I would get up and tell everyone what I thought was going to be on the test. And several people got B's in the class doing nothing but listening to my, my 10-minute spiel, which made me learn everything. So, it was fun for me too. Exactly, to prepare for the test. Also, it's really just, I was good at guessing what he was going to put on the test. That was a lot of,
Probably got an A though.
yes, I got 99s and hundreds in that because I was totally ready. So we'll join back. We'll do another Life Journal Bible study next week. And then we have the book discussion the week after that. And we'll just kind of keep rolling. And after a few more weeks with the Life Journal, if we like this format, we'll keep going. If we'd rather pick, some other like Bible study format, we can. But I think we'll keep rolling. Thank you all. Yes, that is correct.